Hi, my name is Zach Swanson, and today I'll be talking about learning character development through The Good Place. So I hope that many of you are familiar with The Good Place already, but if you're not, no worries. I won't do any spoilers, but I hope that this show will serve as a good reference for how you and I might become better people in our own lives. So we first meet Eleanor Shellstrop, the main character of The Good Place, whenever she arrives in The Good Place. And The Good Place is the equivalent of a Christian heaven, essentially, where the best people on earth, the most moral saints, go to spend eternity. And the good place is where you will fulfill all of your needs, your desires for the rest of eternity. So the problem starts because Eleanor is simply put not meant to be there. She was not a good person on earth. In fact, she was a terrible person. And we see through the show that even though your time on earth might make you a bad person, that there is still room for improvement. So that's what we'll be covering through this presentation. And I wanted to start with a quote from the show's creator, Michael Shore, and that he said in one of his books that in order to write the show that he embarked on a self-designed course of study into moral philosophy, something that he knew little about. He said it was exhausting, but it was really fun. It didn't feel like work really. It felt like listening to a 2,500-year-long conversation that these men and women were having with each other. When you start a TV show, you have very pedestrian goals, make something good that entertains people, but this show had another clandestine goal to add to the conversation. So that is exactly what we're doing here is we're adding to the conversation of what it means to be a good person and how you and I and others might become better people. So looking at the life of Eleanor Shellstrop during her time on Earth, she simply was not a good person. Her career was selling fake medicine to old people, essentially scamming them. She was overly selfish. She indulged in all of these desires, such as alcohol, overeating, sexual desires. And while these might seem like very relatable things to maybe you and I or anyone who lives on Earth, when it came to making it to the good place, she simply was not cut out for it. Another thing that she did while she was on Earth was one of her roommates let her borrow her dress, and she essentially ripped up the dress, and then she took it to the dry cleaner, and she blamed the dress being ripped by the dry cleaner. Well, the roommate, being upset about the dress, went ahead and sued the dry cleaners for millions of dollars and put them out of business. Afterwards, Eleanor continued to make a t-shirt with her roommate's face on it, calling her the dress bitch because this blew up essentially. And even though that she was the one who was responsible for the tears in the dress, she didn't let any of this be known and instead made money off of her roommate and the dry cleaner's misfortune. As Eleanor continued into the good place, she continued her, let's say, less than ideal character behaviors and was continuously selfish, mocked other guests at the first reception, and she even took the sash of best person in the good place, which was meant for the woman on the right, which is the real Eleanor Shellstrop that was supposed to be in the good place from the start. Now, Eleanor continues her bad behaviors into the beginning of the good place, but it quickly becomes apparent that she is not meant to be there and that she is going to start raising havoc on the other good place guests. So, in order to stay in the good place, she decides that she needs to become a better person. The important thing that this show does is it begs a few questions about what it means to be a good person. And it asks, can Eleanor, or any of us for that matter, really become better people? And is character growth something that we can control and even cultivate? And that is what we'll be discussing. So you might be asking, what is character in the first place? So I'll tell you. Character refers to the thoughts, attitudes, and motivations that guide a person's behavior. It includes a set of mental and moral qualities that are distinct to a person, and it is concerned with the direction and the qualities of life. So it's this very holistic idea that includes both your attitudes, your behaviors, and your thoughts. And moral character refers to the qualities and behaviors of a person, such as behaving generously, honestly, and being forgiving. Here I've listed some strengths of character, such as wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, love, hope, kindness, fairness, and all of the rest, and what we would consider these good character traits, right? So these are on a continuum. You might have a lot of love, you might have a lot of wisdom, but you might be low in some other things like hope, humor, leadership, something like that. So at this time, feel free to reflect on any of these character strengths, which ones you identify as strengths, and which ones you might also see as weaknesses in your own character. But do not fear. Even if there are some limitations to any of these character strengths, there is a way to go and improve them. Many big thinkers over time have considered what it means to be a good person and also how to become a better person. So I will now consider some of the theories and ideas that they've had and how they are supported by empirical research to this date. The first step to improving your moral character is to first be aware of your moral character. So this includes things like your moral awareness and also your moral sensitivity and how attentive you are in the first place to moral matters. So I've included this snippet from The Good Place where Eleanor says, "Somebody forked up. Why can't I say fork? If you're trying to curse, you can't here," says Chidi, and Eleanor says, "That's bullshit." So through this funny scene, you can see that Eleanor is becoming aware that certain behaviors, such as cursing, are inappropriate for where she is. At the beginning of The Good Place, we see that Eleanor's character just isn't it. It's very underdeveloped, and she does not possess a lot of the character strengths that are listed here. One that she does possess, however, is humor, and that is very apparent throughout the show. However, she still has room to grow in many of her other character strengths. Once Eleanor becomes aware of her own moral character and realizes that she's not going to be able to stay in the good place as she is, she quickly seeks out a moral mentor or a character mentor. In this case, it's her soulmate, Chidi. And Chidi just happens to be a professor of ethics and moral philosophy, so he knows a lot about character and morality. Eleanor says to him, teach me how to be good. That was your job, right? A professor of ethics? Let me earn my place here. Let me be your ethical guinea pig. So this is actually something that's supported by a lot of the research and the literature on character and moral development, is that one should first seek out a moral exemplar or a moral mentor to help them, and they will serve as a type of role model in this area that will help facilitate your own character growth. Chidi, being the moral philosopher that he is, starts with one of the great thinkers, that is Aristotle. And Aristotle proposes this idea of virtue ethics, that there are certain excellences of moral behaviors that everyone should strive for. And this is a really funny image that I found, which Eleanor asks, it's like, who died and left Chidi in charge of ethics? And for those who are interested in philosophy, Chidi quickly says Plato, which, if you don't know, Plato is the teacher of Aristotle. So it's just a little bit of humor that is built in the show. And what they do in the show is they show quickly that Aristotle's roadmap is one worth seeking out and one worth continuing for character development. In Aristotle's virtue ethics, he quickly identifies four types of persons and four types of character. So first of which is the lowest form, which he calls the fully vicious person. And here I provide an example, is that I eat the jelly donut not knowing that it is bad for me. So in this case, there are three criteria for being a moral person. You have to know the right thing to do, you have to do the right thing through forming habits, and you also should experience the right motivations while doing the right thing. Now, the fully vicious person does not know the right thing to do, doesn't do the right thing, and definitely does not experience the right motivations while doing the right thing. One step up from this is what he calls the weak-willed person. So this is the person that knows the right thing to do, but they don't end up doing it because of some external forces, maybe the environment or the situation, or maybe they just don't want to. So in this case, the jelly donut example would be that I eat the jelly donut and I know that I shouldn't. Another step up from this was what Aristotle called the strong-willed person. So this is the person that one knows the right thing to do and they do the right thing, which is a very important step. However, they still don't have the right desires to do the right thing. In this case, I know I shouldn't eat the jelly donut and I don't eat it, but I still really want to eat it. I really desire it and I crave it. And lastly, what Aristotle says that everyone should be striving for is what is called the fully virtuous person. Now, this is someone who knows what the right thing to do is, they do the right thing, and they even experience the right motivations while doing the right thing, which is very important. And that makes it become a sort of intuition to do the right thing. So this person is not even tempted to eat the jelly donut because they know it's not the right thing to do, and therefore they don't eat it. So this is an example of what Aristotle would call temperance, or being able to wait upon your actions for some desirable outcome. So, why does character development matter in the first place? In our world right now, we're seeing a lot of examples for why character growth is something that we should be striving for. The first of which is the toilet paper hoarders that we experienced during COVID-19. So, when the pandemic started, everyone was going and looking for toilet paper and they stocked up. And you can see here the shelves were just wiped. Now, while this might not seem like a big deal because there was a lot of uncertainty at the time, other people who didn't do this might not have had access to the same resources as they would have otherwise. Another thing that is very important to note is currently in the world, which many of us are unaware of, there is genocide happening. The Uyghur camps over in China, but also there is a large war in Ukraine that is happening, which is also of some concern. And lastly, something that is very popular in the United States and has gained a lot of traction is the social justice movements, particularly against police brutality. So there is a lot of room for character development within authority officials, but also within being able to temper our own actions. Here I provide a quote from my other favorite Eleanor Roosevelt, and she says, "Will people ever be wise enough to refuse to follow bad leaders or to take away the freedom of other people?" And this is essentially the punchline, right? So why do we become better people? Because there are still bad people in the world, and we need to be able to look out and put more goodness into the world. Here I list some contemporary examples of good and bad characters throughout history. So the first one is coming from The Good Place, where Janet, who is essentially the all-knowing robot slash not a robot in The Good Place, says that, fun fact, Columbus is in the bad place because of all the raping, slave trade, and genocide. And this is particularly interesting because in American education, he is someone that we all learn about as being kind of the founder of the New World. However, simply put, he was not a good person to start with. Other examples that come up are Jeffrey Epstein and Vladimir Putin. While arguably you could say that they might not be good examples of bad characters, I would say that they're good enough for the purposes of this talk, and that they both had severe character flaws that set them as exemplars of bad characters. On the positive note, there are a lot of people who are also examples of good characters. Right here, I have Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King Jr. While arguably you could say they might not be the best examples for good characters as well, we renown Abraham Lincoln as being this guy of honest Abe. So we attribute honesty to Abraham Lincoln, and he also was the person responsible for freeing the slaves, which is a very landmark event within American history. And on the other hand, we have a very good character of Martin Luther King Jr., who even goes as far to say that character is something of utmost importance, and that we should judge a man not by the color of his skin, by, but by the content of his character. Looking back now at Eleanor, we might say, how did she become a better person, and where did she end up at the end of The Good Place? So without spoiling anything, I will say that Eleanor learned what moral character was. So she hit that first landmark thing, which was knowing the right thing to do. And the second thing was she started to form moral habits through her relationships with her friends, which is very important. And then she slowly started to have the right intentions, desires, and intuitions to do the right thing always. So here we see another graph, which is all of the character strengths at the end of The Good Place. And you can see while she doesn't hit all of the marks, there's a lot more of the character strength that she identifies with. In particular, she becomes this very strong leader who has courage and humanity, and she believes in justice, and she helps correct and make the good place an even better place. So now I leave you with one final quote from The Good Place, which I really enjoy, and it is from Chidi, who is the professor of ethics and moral philosophy. He is quandered by the idea of why are we even good to begin with? What is the motivation? And he says, So why do it then? Why choose to be good every day if there is no guaranteed reward that we can count on now or in the afterlife? He says that I argue that we should choose to be good because of our bonds with other people and our innate desire to treat them with dignity. Simply put, we are not in this alone. So I would like to echo that because we are not in this alone, you should be striving for improvements in your own character because it will help become better in relation to other people as well. And lastly, I would like to thank you for listening to my talk. Here I've provided some other references for TED Talks, which are very useful for understanding more in depth character development, character education, and why character matters. So thank you for joining.